The pandemic has affected every one of us in the church here. For some of us, we have a family member, friend, neighbor who has lost their job. There's others of us who are working from home. For our young people in school, grade school and high school, some are in the classroom yet. Others are beginning this week and already have been studying by virtual at home. We know some people who have COVID-19, and it's been a minor health problem. We know others hospitalized and have died. My own father, he had COVID and now is in a nursing home, has a very difficult time to eat. He's hardly able to walk without loss of breath, but he is alive. And for that, I thank you especially for your prayers and support. Almost all of us, our lives are changing in terms of COVID, our activities with family and friends. For some of us, it's hardly been a change. Others, dramatic changes. We're not able to be with family and friends the same way. Especially for elderly members of our family and friends, those who might be in assisted living, those who are in nursing homes, those who are restricted even in their own apartments or homes. We know how painful that is, how isolated they have become. We hear every day how our state and our city are seeing a rise in the COVID-19 cases. We know we have to be very careful with our health and the health of our loved ones. We know we have difficult decisions being made in almost every family. Last year, Thanksgiving, Christmas, we could be together, extended family. Many families talking about it now. In fact, some families divided right now. One wants to have the family together, the other doesn't, and unfortunately, so challenging it is. In the midst of all that's happening with the pandemic and just what's going on in our lives, today, Jesus speaks to us as his disciples, and he gives us a guide how we are to live in the middle of a pandemic. Many of us who recall this parable, it's familiar to us. A wealthy man is leaving on a trip, and he gives three of his most trusted advisors, those who work for him. And he gives them huge amounts of wealth, talents. A talent in the time of Jesus was a monetary unit that was worth I should go back on that. It weighed 130 pounds, just one talent. So this is something that's very obvious, evident. How much was it worth? Well, you had to work for a matter of 16 years to earn one talent. So it's very valuable, especially to a servant. So now, these servants are giving these huge amounts. The master trusts them. But as he says there at the very beginning of the parable, he gives them according to their abilities. He knows how much they can do. So he gives one 5, the other, and he's very industrious, gets another 5, another 2, gains 2. And we know the familiar part of this where the one is so fearful, he does nothing. He buries it. And the master is so upset with him, because he says, if nothing else, you could have at least taken the initiative, just bring it to the bank, do something. And I would have been pleased with you. But now take that away from you, give it to the one who has so already done so well, and I want you out. You're to be punished. And it seems like a harsh parable that Jesus is teaching us here today. And sometimes we get caught up in the details, but it's always the point of the parable that's so important for us. What's Jesus saying? Do something as the Lord invites you to do. Do what the Lord challenges you to do. You're not a disciple if you just sit there and you're not some way responding to God. And so today I'd like to suggest to you, here we are, we're going into the winter months, COVID's on the rise, and we know we have to be so very careful, but what can we do for the Lord? What can we do for someone else? Think about it. Do you know anyone who just needs a break for what they're doing? Is there anything we can do for a neighbor, friend, family member? Just simple things. It has to be a lot, and you know better than I what that might be. But to think about that. Is it just something like bringing a meal to someone who's just having a difficult time? I remember hearing so many stories last spring of people in our parish who noticed someone needed help or someone who received a meal, something thoughtful, and it meant so much for them. Do you have elderly family members, friends or neighbors, co-workers who at this time hardly can get out of their apartments, their homes, or might be nursing homes or assisted living? What can you do for them? What can you bring to them, those who are able at least that way? Can we write a small note? Can we make phone calls? Can we text them? Can we write notes? What might it be that we can do? Because for them especially, if we think we're going through great difficulties, and we could be here this morning, you can only imagine those who are watching this Mass right now, live stream, you can only imagine those people who, in so many ways, have hardly anyone. I spoke to a woman last week, and she said, I just called you, Father, because I had nobody else to call. And I thought you would respond. I'm speaking to other people this week, really depressed, feeling isolated for so long, struggling with the possibility that these holidays are going to be so different. There's all kinds of situations, but they all affect us personally, emotionally, and it impacts us in terms of just what we're trying to do and live and be. I'd like to suggest this morning that we consider how we exercise our faith. And I don't mean exercising this way. I mean exercise in terms of praying about who is it that could just benefit by what we could do for them. And I'd like to suggest anyone here who is a parent or a grandparent to suggest to your children or your grandchildren to ask them to help you. Ask them to think about who is it in our family, who is it in our neighborhood, who is it that would love to have a note from a child. One of those little colored pictures, however it is, it means so much for something which you might think is so small, but just something that, again, can be with an elderly person. They put it up for them. It means so much. And help our children, help our grandchildren recognize we are part of a larger family and how it's affecting us personally. Help them realize how to be a young disciple of Jesus. Help them to be aware how a disciple of Jesus, as Jesus teaches us in the gospel today, does something. Not just for themselves, but for others. Because this is the way we honor God. This is a way we are a disciple of Jesus. This is what we're called to do during this time. God is inviting us. Whatever simple ways, these are not profound ways. These aren't ways that in so many ways somebody else notices. Only God is the only one to notice. It's these people in these times, in these weeks and months, who in so many ways would be so grateful for someone who is considerate, thoughtful, and generous. And that is the mark of being a disciple of Jesus.